So-called Christians have lied to you about the biblical meaning of Gentiles.
No, we have not. Rather, you have adopted an idea that was developed by British or Anglo-Israelites that was adopted by the Christian identity movement and then adopted by One West Hebrew Israelism. And you're going to try to distort sources and the text of the Bible to prove it, but we're going to break it down.
They will have you think that Gentiles means all the other nations to imply that salvation is for all other nations outside of the Israelites. However, their own scholars have revealed that Gentiles only usually means all the other nations. For example, the Zondervan Bible Dictionary.
Now I want us to carefully read this source, so let's look at it and read what it says slowly. Gentiles, a translation, so not the only one, but one of, a translation of the Hebrew word goy, plural goyim. Basically, the word means nation and is so consistently translated in the NIV. So we're talking about the word that is translated, that is goy and goyim, and so it is translated as nation. It, that is goy or goyim, usually means a non-Israelite people. But on occasion, even Israel is called a goy, a nation. Now, the issue is the specific meaning of Gentiles, not the broad meaning of goy and goyim. Gentiles means non-Israelites, but goy and goyim is usually non-Israelites, but sometimes Israel. It is not the case that whenever it is rendered Gentiles, it ever means Israelites, which is the claim that is being made here. This source does not substantiate that the translation Gentiles ever refers to Israel, because it does not.
And even Wikipedia, which would indicate that there.
And this Wikipedia reference is in no way helpful, because we have to remember, if you look in any Bible dictionary and you look up the term Jew, it's being used for all of Israel. So when it says non-Jewish, it's saying somebody who is not an Israelite. And that's the failure to comprehend that happens with IUIC.
Are instances in the Bible in which Israelites are called Gentiles. Let's get one. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, which was written by Paul, he wrote to the Corinthians who were in Greece. Now watch this. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. So now wait a minute. We know Paul was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, according to Philippians 3, verse 5. He calls these Corinthians, who were Greek Gentiles, brethren.
And here we get the assumption that brethren always refers to physical lineage. That's not correct. There are at least two distinct types of brethren that are referred to by Paul: brethren in the flesh and brethren in the Lord. Let's see the distinction. Philemon chapter 1, start in verse 15. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldest receive him forever. Not as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved, specially to me, but how much more unto thee, both in the flesh and in the Lord. Now, we have to ask the question, why were Philemon and Onesimus much more brothers, both in the flesh and in the Lord, than Paul and them? Because they weren't Israelites. You see, Onesimus and Philemon were both Gentiles, so they were brothers in the flesh and in the Lord, whereas they and Paul were only brothers in the Lord.
It also implies that they were Gentiles when they were led away to follow dumb idols. Could this mean that these were Israelites that lost their Israelite identity after the process of committing to idolatry, or am I just reaching?
You're definitely reaching. Let's find out what Israelites called other Israelites who were worshiping idols and doing other wicked things. 1 Maccabees chapter 7, verse 5. There came unto him all the wicked and ungodly men of Israel. They were not called Gentiles by Israelites. They were called wicked and ungodly men of Israel. At no time do we see Israelites calling other Israelites Gentiles. This is simply made up. But how do we understand chapter 12, verse 2? Well, we simply go a little bit earlier into chapter 10, and we find Paul makes a distinction between Jews, Gentiles, and the church of God. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 32. Give none offense, neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God. So even though ethnically the church consists of Jews and Gentiles, Paul is here distinguishing the church from both of them. And so they were Gentiles, not in that their ethnicity has changed, but that they are now part of the church of God.
Let's see. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1, same letter to the same people. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. So Paul and these Greek Gentiles had the same forefathers that went through the Red Sea and were baptized unto Moses. That sounds like Israelite history.
Now I want to see if you're going to keep that same energy when we go back into 1 Chronicles. Let's take a look. We're in 1 Chronicles 29. It says, furthermore, David the king said to all the congregation. So David's talking to all the congregation. Verse 10, David continues, wherefore David blessed the Lord before all the congregation, and David said, blessed be thou, Lord God of Israel, our Father forever and ever. So he calls the man Israel he's referring to here, our Father. He says in verse 18, O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel, our fathers. Okay. He's saying these three are their fathers. Now we're going to go into chapter 28 and set the scene and see who is being addressed here by David. It says in verse 1, and David assembled all the princes of Israel, the princes of the tribes, and the captains of the companies that ministered to the king by course, and the captains over the thousands, and the captains over the hundreds, and the stewards over all the substance and possessions of the king, and of his sons, and the officers, and with the mighty men, and with all the valiant men unto Jerusalem. Then David the king stood up upon his feet and said, hear me, my brethren and my people. As for me, I had in mine heart to build a house of rest for the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and for the footstool of our God. So he calls these people his brethren, his people, and he refers to the true God, Yahweh, as our God. But who's in this group here? Certainly Israelites, but is it only the Israelite bloodline? Well, notice the stewards over the substance and the possession of the king. Is that only Israelites? Let's find out. Verse 30 of 1 Chronicles 27, just one chapter back. Over the camels was Obal the Ishmaelite. David says, my brethren and my people, our God, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our fathers, and yet among these people David is addressing is an Ishmaelite. Has he now been adopted into the people of Israel? But not only him. Remember, David's mighty men were there too. And so we see when we go back into 1 Chronicles 11, and this is the number of the mighty men whom David had. Verse 39, Zelek the Ammonite, and Ithma the Moabite. You see, there were foreigners who had joined Israel and were adopted in. And so David is addressing all of these people with this language. My brethren, my people, our God, our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel.
What other nations share that history with Paul's same forefathers? That doesn't even make sense.
Apparently it does, because you could be adopted into the nation.
So clearly, the Gentiles or Greeks that Paul was writing to were not only in the letter to the Corinthians, but throughout all of his epistles. These were Israelites that went through the process of Hellenization. They assimilated into Greek customs. They lost their Israelite heritage. But by bloodline or ancestry, their forefathers were still that of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
As we read about Paul's ministry in the book of Acts, where does he ever ask people about their genealogy? Where does he ask them who their father is, what nationality they are, what is their ethnicity? We never find that. In fact, does Paul ever encourage people to investigate their genealogy to find out their origin? No, just the opposite. He tells Timothy and Titus not to concern themselves with genealogy. In fact, not to pursue that at all. If it was so important, you would think it would be just the opposite.